We're looking at why Christians believe Christianity to be true. And in this, our fifth part of the series, we're looking at what's certainly the most challenging claim in Christianity. Jesus claimed not only that he was God visiting earth, which we looked at in our last session, but that he was also the only way to God. If this is true, Jesus' claim affects every person and religion. In fact, it's a pretty arrogant claim unless it's true. To give you a quote, so there's no question he did claim this. Jesus said in John 14:6, "I am the way, the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." It's a clear claim. But we've got to discuss the idea of tolerance and respect first. Imagine that you think gambling is wrong because it wrecks people's lives, but I think it's fine. Are you or I prejudiced or intolerant because we have different views? Clearly not. Tolerance is not about agreeing, it's about how we treat each other, no matter how much we disagree. In other words, we should be free to discuss religion and have our views and to express them, but we need to treat people equally and fairly, even when we disagree with their ideas. With that understanding, let's start.
I think that for Jesus to claim that he is a way, compared to other religious people who have also claimed that, out of all these people, Jesus was the only one who raised from the dead.
It's only in this particular religion that God himself came as a human, as a sacrifice.
He's the only one that's claimed to be the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And if you believe in the empty grave, that's the cornerstone of my faith, the empty grave, the resurrection. If you believe in that and you see that, then yeah, I believe he is the way, the truth, and the life.
It can be uncomfortable to say that because it sounds very I'm on my pedestal and be oh, Christians are better than everyone else. But I think it more comes down to truth, and that if you have three different religions saying completely different things about who God is and the nature of God, they can't all be true at the same time.
What makes him stand out against other religions is that he invites us to a loving relationship with him.
I think that some of the Christian values can be found among other religions, but I definitely think that the core principle of Christianity, that Jesus is the Son of God, is the main outstanding difference out of all the religions.
I can't imagine a king coming as a slave, or a God sacrificing himself for us, even if we're sinful.
Some people claim all the religions are essentially the same. And this view has been made popular in our day, and maybe it's because people feel it's a neutral position, because they're not really disagreeing with anyone. But that isn't actually the case. If you claim all religions are the same, that's a religious truth claim like any other. And you're actually saying that anyone who believes a single religion is true is wrong. So saying all the religions are the same doesn't avoid the problem. But there's a bigger problem with the idea that all the religions are the same, and that is the fact that they're not. To quote the apologist Gregory Kukul, he says, all the religions are essentially the same, except in the areas of God and salvation and the problem of man and the afterlife and that kind of stuff. It turns out that on the big issues, they are very, very different. They can't all be true. For example, God cannot exist and not exist. Jesus' claim to be the man from God is either true or not true. It can't be both. So there's an important discussion to have here, though respectfully. Now, Jesus stands out among the major world religions leaders in a number of ways. I'll show you a few, and you can decide. For example, if we consider what some of the world's major religions founders claimed, Buddha claimed to point the way. Muhammad claimed to be a prophet of God. Darwin claimed to be an accident of chance. While Jesus made a claim so radical that you can't put it beside any of those, because he claimed to be God. It's a huge claim. As another example, if we look at the methods of the religions, how salvation or the reward is gained. In Islam, salvation comes by belief in Allah, Muhammad his prophet, and good works. In Hinduism, it comes by overcoming karma and incarnations by good works. In Buddhism, it comes by getting rid of all desires on the Eightfold Path. While in Christianity, it comes by faith alone in Christ alone. Some summarize this distinctive as do versus done. Instead of being about what we need to do to get to heaven, or whatever we're trying to get to, it's about what God has done for us through Jesus. Because there's nothing we could ever do to earn our way to heaven. And again, this is a big difference, and the word that describes it is called grace. Another distinctive is the teachings of Jesus. They're amazing. And the easiest way to explain this point briefly is to share some thoughts about Jesus from people who didn't believe he came from God. The religious skeptic David Strauss, who rejected the divinity of Jesus and all of the miracles, he wrote, "This Christ is historical, not mythical. He remains the highest model of religion within the reach of our thought." William Leakey, a noted British historian and also a dedicated opponent of organized Christianity, he said of Jesus, "It was reserved for Christianity to present to the world an ideal character which through all the changes of 18 centuries has inspired the hearts of men, giving not only the highest pattern of virtue, but the strongest incentive to its practice." And for one more example, Napoleon Bonaparte, the French military leader, just for fun. He saw religion as nothing other than a tool to be used by people with power. But he said this, "I know men, and I tell you that Jesus Christ is not an ordinary man. Superficial minds see a resemblance between Christ and the founders of empires and the gods of other religions. That resemblance does not exist. There is between Christianity and whatever other religions the distance of infinity." And these are high commendations when we note that they are from people who don't believe Jesus was from God. And for a final comparison, Christianity stands out in its positive impact upon the world, giving us our concepts of individual human value, charity, equality of races, equality of genders, the limitation of government powers, education for all, healthcare for all, and more. We discuss this later in the series, but to summarize, William Robinson, a professor of information science, said, "If one takes an historically objective approach, even secular history affirms that Jesus changed the course of the world's history." D. James Kennedy, a Christian broadcaster, he put it this way, "All the armies that ever marched, all the navies that ever sailed, all the parliaments that ever sat, all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of people on this earth as much as that one solitary life." So one of the reasons Christians believe Christianity is true is because Jesus really did stand out. And it doesn't take much of a look at the world's religions to see that they are really different from each other and in the big things. Let's now look at Jesus from a different angle. We've already noted that Jesus didn't claim only to be a spiritual teacher, but to be God and the only way to God. If we follow the logic here for a while, this claim forces us to some hard questions because just as the different ideas in the various religions can't all be true, different ideas people have about who Jesus was can't be either. The scholar C.S. Lewis, the author of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and the Chronicles of Narnia, he put it this way. He says Jesus was either a lunatic or a liar, or he was who he claimed to be, which is Lord. So firstly, could Jesus have been a liar? Might he have intentionally deceived everyone, stating something that he knew wasn't true? Very few have ever suggested it. You see, Jesus was clearly convinced of what he said. And to suggest that he was deceiving while giving the most amazing and selfless moral teachings ever uttered, which he also lived out in his example of selfless love, just makes no sense. The historian Philip Schaff, he put it this way, "How in the name of logic, common sense and experience could an imposter have invented and consistently maintained from beginning to end the noblest and purest character known in history with the most perfect air of truth and reality? And if Jesus was lying, why did he die for it?" The next option is that he might have been a lunatic. And madness is exactly what the Jewish leaders of Jesus' day accused him of, or of being demon-possessed. But they had their own reasons and motives for criticizing him. This question of Jesus' insanity was put in an interview to Gary Collins, a noted clinical psychologist and psychology professor. In response, Collins gave this really insightful observation. He said, "Jesus was loving, but he didn't let compassion immobilize him. He didn't have a bloated ego, even though he was often surrounded by adoring crowds. Jesus maintained balance despite a demanding lifestyle. He always knew what he was doing and where he was going. He cared deeply for people, including women and children who weren't seen as being important back then. He was able to accept people while not ignoring their sin. He responded to individuals based on where they were at and what they uniquely needed. All in all, I just don't see signs that Jesus was suffering from any known mental illness. In fact, he was much healthier than anyone I know, including me. But if Jesus wasn't a liar or a lunatic, the only other option is that he was who he claimed to be, which is Lord. Now, if we think this one through, if there is a God, miracles are possible. In fact, if there's even just a spiritual realm, miracles are possible. So there's no logical reason why God couldn't come to earth as a human if he wanted to. The question is if he did. To put that differently, do you think that God might be anywhere near loving and humble enough to do what it's claimed Jesus did? Surrendering divine power, living as a human amongst us like our equal to communicate and to die for us. And if we think God might be that humble and loving to do that, the question to ask is whether the historical story and accounts of Jesus' life fit that picture or not. To conclude here, I want to quote you what C.S. Lewis said about these three different options. To quote, "I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on a level with a man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make a choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come up with any patronizing nonsense about him being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to." There is a saying, all roads lead to Rome. And some like to apply this to the religions, that all religions somehow lead to the same God. But to get to my office from my house, I have to turn right, not left. And in the same way, all the religious beliefs aren't the same. And sometimes if something is true, it means the other option is false. All options can't be true. So is our existence as humans on this planet all a meaningless accident? Or is it a mystery we'll never understand? Or might we have been created by a being who has intelligence and who made us with purpose? These three questions reflect the three main categories of the world's major religions, as to whether there's a God or many gods or no God. And all those views can't be true. And if we were created by an intelligent creator, then who was Jesus? A liar or a lunatic or Lord? Because he is one of those. And these are some of the reasons Christians believe Christianity to be true. We have two more topics to cover. Our last episode is going to look at how this faith works for people in real life. And this is probably the main reason many people believe Christianity to be true. But before that, we're going to ask a question many people never think to ask. And that is, what is the problem with this world really? Imagine you're sick and I'm a doctor. If I misdiagnose your sickness and give you the wrong medicine, I might not only not fix you, I might hurt you. So is what Jesus came to do actually the number one thing that we need? It's a powerful and revealing question. We'll see you then.